Hello and welcome to another session of Negotiating the New Normal. My name's Adam Bates and it is my pleasure to introduce to you Rhiannon Thomas, who is going to be talking about conscious planning for end of life, an integrative law approach. Over to you, Rhiannon.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Adam. And thank you for the opportunity to be able to present on a topic that is very close to my heart. And before I start, I lost all the contacts on my phone today and all the photos that I have from about 5,000 photos. So I'm feeling a little bit out of sorts, but it also brought home to me that these losses are ways in which we can learn and process how to deal with other people's losses. And so I'm trying to look at it as a learning opportunity. I'm going to share my screen and talk through some slides. The outline of the presentation will be a bit of storytelling about my own story and background, and then looking at a few nuts and bolts of how I actually run my own conscious will process, and then some tools for people to take away if they would like to bring any of these ideas or practices into their own practices. And they apply, because it's an integrative law approach, the tools can be used in all kinds of practices and not just in wills and probate. Okay, I'm just going to have to check. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. So let me see how to fix that. Sending a message. Let's see if I can share my screen. Ah, there we go. None of those. So let me open it. Sorry for the tick delay. Is that sharing now? I'm not sure. Share screen. Okay, I think I am sharing now. So the topic, conscious planning for end of life and integrative law approach. And the traditional approach to wills is very formulaic and it becomes quite dry and mechanical after a while. People tend to do a tick box approach to what is a particularly, in my view, emotive area of the law. And the tick box approach avoids the reasons for the conversation, which is the elephant in the room, death. And so the conscious integrated approach allows clients to engage more fully with the legacy they leave behind. So this is a story for all those lawyers who have ever felt alone or felt a bit different from the others, or perhaps not sure which way they were headed or felt a bit lost. And for those users of the law who may have had negative experiences, especially around this area. So in the story, I want to show you a different way, a pathway, open a door to something a little bit different and perhaps more meaningful. When I was a child, I particularly loved stories, and I was the youngest in our family, so by a long way. So I spent a lot of time on my own, and the stories that I loved the best were those around love, the human condition. So love, life, death, and everything in between. And overcoming adversities and adventures were also something that I really enjoyed. So I sort of explored so many narratives as a young child. I grew up in apartheid South Africa, where everybody was told that white people were superior to anybody else. It was a world of white privilege. There were separate immunities, and the only contact that one really had with people from other races was those people who came to work in one's house. So the cleaning lady, the gardener, and the nanny. But I was particularly lucky and privileged, I suppose, as a child, in that my parents were a bit older, and so they traveled a lot, and I got to travel with them. And on my travels, I saw so many different ways of living and being, and where people of different races mixed together freely, and realized that apartheid was a narrative. It was a story that we were being told about how one group was better than another. Then when I was about 15, I experienced my first loss, which was the death of my grandfather. And I also started suffering from what has been a lifelong journey with depression. And so I learned to put on a happy face, but underneath that, I was often very sad and struggling to find my place in the world. And then in 1990, Nelson Mandela, I was still at school, so 2 years left of high school in 1990, and Nelson Mandela was released from prison. And that was a very amazing day in South Africa, and he had some really amazing things to say. And that was when I started to realize that I wanted to be part of a different narrative for our country, for South Africa, and a narrative where people were seen as equal. So when I left school, I decided I would go and study a BA degree in English, loving books and reading and writing, and now I had to do that all the time for my studies. And they examined the many narratives of colonialism and its impact on South Africa and the world at large, and started thinking about how could I be a part of making a difference. But then during my university career, my mother died suddenly and unexpectedly, and that really threw me off track for quite a while, and it was really tough. I cried a lot for a long time, and everything became a bit of a blur. And it was a time where I realized that things could suddenly change at any moment. And so after quite a long time, I went back to what was my happy place, which was the University of Cape Town, this picture that you're seeing, to study law. And I really enjoyed studying law. I went there because I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to help people. I wanted to bring more justice into the world. And I liked the intellectual challenges and the rigors of studying law, and threw myself into the legal narrative. So when I graduated, I went off to become a lawyer, and this is what I pictured. In fact, that is what I wore to my very first day as a lawyer, the black suit, and I went off to play in this paradigm, in this narrative, the game of being a lawyer, and it was not what I had expected at all. It felt very empty and very soulless, and I just didn't see how I was actually making a real difference. So I thought, well, I'll go back to my happy place, and I finished my articles and went back to the university to tutor law and do research, and I enrolled for a PhD, and I thought perhaps this was the way that I was going to make a difference in the world, using my legal skills. But that too became a feeling of being in an ivory tower and not having much impact on the lives of everyday people, which was something that had been with me for a very long time. But one thing I did learn about while I was there was the idea of the integrated health professional, and I facilitated a course in the health sciences faculty. And this concept really struck me as having three aspects: the knowledge dimension, which I had a lot of, and all lawyers have a lot of, because we put a lot of information into this brain of ours. And then there was the empathic health professional and the reflective health professional. And those were the parts where I thought, that's interesting. We didn't get taught anything about that in law school. And maybe the answer is to be the integrated legal professional. So I left academia and I set up my own law firm. And this is the landing page on my website, which looks very lawyerly. And I did try to be a bit different. And I said on my page, I believe that the right practice of law involves bringing our humanity to bear on all areas of legal practice and being mindful of the impact that our behavior and relationships have on ourselves, others, and the legal profession as a whole. And so one of the areas that I decided to focus on, because I had experienced a lot of loss and grief and death in my life, was wills and deceased estates. And I thought I could bring something different to that because of my own relationship with death and dying. But what I noticed was that most of the time when people came to see me, it was a really emotive conversation, and people sometimes cried in my consulting rooms when we talked about the life of how, who would look after their children if they died. And I realized I was very ill-equipped to deal with this quite emotive area of the law in a holistic and humane way, which is what I wanted to do. Then in 2012, things changed, and I met a lawyer named J. Kim Wright, came to South Africa from America, and she introduced me to the integrative law movement and her book, Lawyers as Peacemakers, practicing holistic problem-solving law. And I realized that I wasn't the only one who felt that the legal system needed to change. And so, not long after meeting Kim, I changed my website. And you can see this one looks very different to the Rhiannon Thomas and Associates, and in the logo there's a heart incorporated into that, and it was a collaborative consultancy. It's not really a law firm because I was working with other professionals from other disciplines, and a much softer feel to help people draw up wills, but not just legal wills, living wills and ethical wills. So I want to share with you the nuts and bolts of the conscious will process. And yeah, let me move to the next slide. So the main thing that guides me and helps me to offer this process is collaboration with other professionals from other disciplines. So these lovely women that you see in front of you are all either psychologists or social workers or grief counselors. And together with them, I offered a collaborative service where we could actually talk about death and dying in a contained and safe and helpful way. And the elephant in the room was welcomed into the room, and you can see this picture where there's the elephant and the skull, and death was welcomed into the conversation. And you would think that would be morbid and sad, but actually it was so amazing, because as soon as people could talk openly about their fear or what would happen, they felt much freer and much safer and more secure. And so the conversations were always really meaningful and helpful. So the other thing that I brought into the process was values, and getting the people to look, the clients, to look very carefully at their own values and how these impacted on what they kind of legacy they wanted to leave for the world. So someone who has a very strong value of fairness, if they in their will disinherited somebody, that wouldn't sit well with the value of fairness, or at least I didn't think so, then I would speak to that more. And so we could speak more deeply about things that people were doing. We also shifted the focus in that we used the values to talk about the things rather than just talking about the things. And we talked about more than just physical things like property and body, but we also included the mind and heart, and then the non-physical things, the stories about the property, and how one wished to be treated at end of life and after death, and what kind of legacy you were leaving behind for your family, for society, and for the world at large. And so this process has many benefits for clients, and also for lawyers, because you feel, as a lawyer, I feel that I'm really offering something meaningful and helpful. Clients feel heard, feel held, and feel safe, and they leave the process with a greater sense of peace and security. And they end up with a will that is a document that reflects them, not just some standard formulaic thing that they've downloaded from the internet. So perhaps these are some things you could think about to create a more integrated practice in whatever area of law. Perhaps change your process. Could you do a collaborative offering by working with people from other disciplines? Can you shift the focus like we did from looking at things to looking at values? What about asking different questions and allowing time for reflection? So I want to share just a few of the tools that I use, and you're welcome to use these. And they're free to use. You can copy them exactly. You can add to them whatever you would like. So the questions that we asked with regard to the will process, or that I do ask, and I send these to every client, and it's quite revealing as to whether they answer them, how they answer them, if they don't, what they do. So those are the 5 questions. What's important for us to know about you? What is most important to you? What is worrying you most? How can we best support you? And what are your top 5 values? And many people haven't thought about those things when they go to see the lawyer. Another tool is that I share with people about legacy and what they can do, write letters, create books, make
Rhiannon.
all kinds of. Hi.
Hi. Unfortunately, I don't think we're seeing your feed that the way you're seeing it. You may have to redo the share screen process. I can walk you through it slightly.
Okay, must I stop my share?
So stop sharing your screen, click it again. And when you click it, you need to select the screen that is specifically showing your presentation. So not.
I see, okay. Well, I mean, we're almost at the end of the time, so maybe I should just finish off like this.
That's fine, whatever works for you. I'm just, I'm just trying to help you to show what you want to.
I didn't see that note from you.
No worries, no worries.
Yeah. The slides are available if anybody wants them. So, and I was almost at the end of the presentation, just to say, I mean, I have read out what was on the slides. They were mostly just images. And so I just wanted to end really with a quote from Carl Jung, and which I think is quite inspiring, and I think it relates to everybody who is at the summit, because we are all here because we want to do something different. So let me just see if I can get to it, because I can't remember it off by heart. So yeah, here we go. So Carl Jung says, do not compare, do not measure. No other way is like yours. All other ways deceive and tempt you. You must fulfill the way that is in you. And then to close, I wanted to just share a quote. It's a saying, actually. It's an African saying that says, if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And for me, this virtual summit is about us all finding ways to go far, to go there together, and to bring about a change in the legal system and in the prevailing narrative, to change it into a more human and heart-centered place for people to engage with what the law can do to help them and to help our society. And with that, that's what I would like to end with. So thank you very much.
No problem, Rhiannon. That was honestly pretty wonderful to hear about your story that way. Are you okay? Is that your presentation there?
Yeah, I don't know. So if there, I mean, I wasn't sure. I was told about 15 minutes. So I don't know if there is any time left. It was going to be for discussion if there was anyone who came in. But if there isn't, that's it.
I think we have about a few minutes left, 5 minutes left. So if you want to have any closing remarks or thoughts or anything to say or talk about.
Yeah, well, I suppose the thing that I would have shared more of in the presentation, but didn't, was how I think it's really important for lawyers working in whatever area they're working in to examine their own relationship with that particular area of the law. So where, especially in the areas that deal with the human condition, so children, family, death, those kind of areas. As lawyers, we don't reflect a lot on our own behavior and how that influences the way we engage with other people. And I'm not sure if anyone knows, well, many people do, maybe not everyone has heard about the 4 agreements. But one of the agreements is don't make assumptions. And be impeccable with don't make assumptions, because everybody says things that reflect their own reality, not necessarily the reality of other people who you are talking to. And so if we can reflect on our own relationship, and in this area it would be what is our relationship with death, loss and grief, and be very mindful of that when we engage with our clients, I think it can only help the process, because one can then connect more using one's other intelligences, not just the intellect. So that's all that I would have added. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, yes, really pleased to have you here, and it was honestly very enlightening hearing your story. We have to close up now and head on to the other sessions. This was Rhiannon Thomas. We have loads of other sessions coming up in a while. So take care to the Transition Lounge. Check your schedules. Thank you, Rhiannon, so much.
Thank you.
And